Welcome, welcome, welcome to episode 228 of the show with no name. I'm your humble host, Nick, and in today's episode, I'm going to be visiting another old little farmer cemetery out in the middle of nowhere in Washington State. This cemetery goes by the name of the St. Joseph Catholic Cemetery, and it's located in the outskirts of the town of Odessa that I've been focusing on recently. And I have a couple stories to tell about this cemetery, so let's get into this. This cemetery seems to be a burial ground mostly for the immigrants that immigrated to America from the Czech Republic. Although there were a few people buried here that were from various states in the United States, and even one person that was born in Portugal. I'm not sure the exact year that this cemetery was founded, but the oldest recorded burial is in the year 1901, so it had to have been founded sometime around then. The burials seem to stop in the 1930s, with the exception of somebody that was buried in 1958 and then somebody else that was buried in the year 2018. But other than that, this cemetery seemed to have stopped receiving burials in the 1930s. I think the reason for that is that people from the area just started getting buried in the bigger, newer town cemetery in Odessa that we will be getting into and covering later on in this channel. I'm going to start out now talking about the Groh family. This is the headstone of Frank Groh, and he was born in 1866 in Ukraine. And he would get married to his wife, Amelia, in Russia. They would immigrate to America, arriving in New York on July 6th, 1901, with their 4 children. They were farmers, and unfortunately, just 3 years later, sometime in 1904, Frank would suddenly pass away at the young age of 37 here in Odessa, Washington, and his wife would soon get remarried and give birth to twins with her second husband, and they are buried elsewhere. And that's a common theme when you get out into these old farmer cemeteries. A lot of people would get remarried after the death of one of their spouses and end up moving on and get buried elsewhere. So you tend to find in each one of these little farmer cemeteries a few spouses that were left behind. And then there's members of the Havlicek family that are buried out here in this cemetery. The Havlicek family, they were immigrants from the Czech Republic, and they came to Minnesota when they immigrated to the United States. And then from Minnesota, they would come all the way out here to Odessa, Washington. Louis Havlicek was born on July 15th, 1901 in Minnesota, and he would pass away at the young age of 18 on May 22nd, 1920, of tuberculosis. His father, Thomas, was born on March 16th, 1842, in the Czech Republic. And when he was a young lad, he emigrated to Chicago, residing there for about 20 years before he moved to Jackson County, Minnesota, and then later to Odessa, Lincoln County, Washington, in 1901. He was an honest, hardworking, honorable gentleman, one of a kind, and he commanded and received the respect of all classes and sects of people, and one that will be missed often by many friends. He was 74 years old, and he died at his home northeast of Odessa on April 6, 1916. He was taken ill after eating canned salmon, and he died 4 days later from food poisoning. He is survived by his wife, 7 sons, and 3 daughters. His wife, Sophia, would remain on the ranch for 7 more years, where she farmed with her sons. Then later she would move to Odessa, where she would pass away at the home of her son Thomas Jr. She passed away on October 11th, 1934, at the age of 70. The last family I'm going to talk about in today's episode is the Vostraw family. And I'm going to start out with Helen Josephine Vostraw. And she was born on March 19th, 1907 in Adams County, Washington. And she would pass away on July 18th, 1909 at the young age of 2. Her cause of death was pretty interesting, and it's something I've never heard of before. Little Helen died after an illness of but a few days. Aged 2 years and 3 months, the cause of death was poisoning from eating strawberries that had been bitten by a rattlesnake or some poisonous insect. Her mother was taken sick at the same time from the same cause, but has since recovered. Little baby Helen is buried here in this cemetery, next to her cousin and her grandparents. Her grandfather, James, was born on January 5th, 1840 in the Czech Republic, and he would pass away on April 12th, 1919 at the age of 79 here in Odessa, Washington. His wife, Catherine, was born on November 16th, 1844 in the Czech Republic, and she would pass away on May 10th, 1935 at the age of 90 here in Odessa, Washington. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Thank you.